the National Endowment for the Humanities, bringing you the stories that define us.
Hello, please state your name, your age, when you were born, and where you were born.
Okay, I'm Rosa Chavez. I was born in San Elizario, Texas on October 1934. I am one of 15 children. My mother had 15 kids, and two of them died during the Spanish flu, 1920, 1921. It's the flu like the one's going on right now. And they were only 6 months old. One died, and then about 18 months later, the other one died. And I also lost a brother in World War II. He got the Medal of Honor because he kept he's getting healed. So that's when I lost my brother in 1945.
I'm sorry. And tell me, and which number were you? Because out of you 15, which one were you?
Okay, I was about number 10. So
Okay.
I was one of the young ones, so I didn't have it as bad as my older sisters did
Yeah.
because they worked very hard. I was one of the youngest.
How many sisters and how many brothers?
Okay, I had 5 sisters and 7 brothers. There were 12 of us living until, like I say, 1945, when I lost my brother at the war.
Okay. And so tell me about your childhood. How was it growing up in San Elizario with all of them?
Okay, San Elizario was a very small town, nothing to what it is right now. We have very few people, and it was beautiful because we had a lot of trees, open field. We have cotton fields, alfalfa fields, and it was just a lot of raw land. And it was very nice because it was a small town. Everybody knew everybody else, and every if you needed somebody, they were very helpful people. They were very good people that we had neighbors. If you needed something, they were always there for you to help you. And like my mother, if she was cooking something and she didn't have enough flour or enough sugar, she would send us to the neighbor to borrow a cup of sugar, a cup of flour. And you used to have those big balls of flour and sugar because my mother cooked a lot. And it was a very nice town to live in because everybody knew everybody and everybody was so helpful. And I really enjoyed my youth there. I lived there for 22 years, and but I saw the town, growing because more and more people moved there and people started building more houses. But it was a very nice place to live in. I really enjoyed it. And then we didn't have to go to neighbors to play because there was a bunch of us. So we just stayed home most of the time.
Where did you go to school and how was it like there?
Okay, San Elizario had one school. It was the elementary school, and we did have a bus. And we walked to school because we only lived like half a mile from there. We used to come home for lunch. And the people that lived far, the bus would go pick them up and they'd take their lunches to school. And but that was the only school. There wasn't any high school. There was just the elementary from 1st grade to 8th grade. And I remember like yesterday, my 1st grade teacher and she was such a darling. She was Mrs. Graciela. And see, we didn't know any English when I went to school because we just spoke Spanish at home. My father didn't like for us to speak English because he thought we were going to forget the Spanish language, which is, you don't forget your first language. But we spoke Spanish at home, so it was very hard for the teacher. And it was important for her to be bilingual, which she was bilingual. And so Miss Graciela, the first thing they told us the first day, I remember that like if it was yesterday, she said in Spanish, she spoke to us in Spanish because some of us didn't know English. And she said, from now on, she said, you are going to speak English at all times. I'm going to help you out. I'm not going to criticize you, but I'm going to help you out. And you're going to speak English all the time so you can learn it because all our books were in English, you know. So it was very hard for us to read or write or do math, problems in math. So would you believe by the end of the year, we all learned the language in 1 year. And then she told us, be sure you speak English at home. We did speak a little English at home then. And then she said, when you go out to recess, to lunch hour, speak the English language, and that's the only way you're going to learn it fast and better. So she was a very nice teacher. And I remember the other teacher was a music teacher. She taught us, that was Mrs. Laurie. She taught us how to sing. I learned how to sing because we sing at home, but you know, Spanish songs. She told us how to sing. She taught us how to act. And she put on plays like Scrooge, like The First Christmas. And our parents were very satisfied with her, and we were too, because she really, we learned how to act. And then she would send a paper home and with a copy of the costume that our parents were supposed to make us, because most of the people at that time sewed. So they made that a costume. And then they had a play one night. And all the parents went, and they were very satisfied with what we were learning with her. So I remember those two were my best teachers there in the elementary level.
I forgot to ask this, but where is your family from? Where did they come from? Or have they always been in San Elizario? Like your parents?
Okay, my mom is from Aguascalientes, Mexico. And her mom was from Mexico too, and her dad was from Mexico.
Yeah.
But her dad's parents were from Spain. Their original came from Spain. That was my mother. Now on my father's side, my grandmother, my father's mother was from San Elizario. And I think her grandmother was from San Elizario too. And then, but my father's father was from Yomada, Mexico. So they were from Mexico.
So you have some lineage tracing back to San Elizario.
Excuse me?
So you have some lineage tracing back to San Elizario.
Oh, yes, definitely, because both my grandmother and my grandmother lived there. That's the only grandmother I knew. She lived there in San Elizario, and her name was Grijalva.
Do you have any memories with her growing up in San Elizario?
Yes, she was a very sweet old lady at the time. She was a little heavy, and you know, as she got old, she lived by herself. And but when it got that she needed help, my mother, it was her mother-in-law. My mother took care of her for months, and she brought her to our house. And so she didn't speak much, but she was a very quiet person, a very simple, reserved person. And one of the things that I remember most of her, she would get up during the day, and I guess, see, my mother had a big house, so she would get up, and she was always praying the rosary and going from room to room. And, you know, that's what stayed in my mind, because that's the only thing she really did. We would take her to church on Sundays, and she would go, and sometimes she was falling asleep, but it was such a joy to have her around, you know. And before she lived with us, we used to go visit her all the time. And one of my brothers would always go to see if she needed anything, because she lived by herself in a big house.
Yeah. And you spoke to her in Spanish?
Oh, yes. No, she just knew Spanish. We spoke to her in Spanish. We never forgot the language in home. We spoke in Spanish.
Yeah.
School, it was all English. They wanted us to really learn the language. And I'm glad because all the books and the papers and everything you turn in, they have to be in English. So I'm so glad they did that.
Yeah. So outside of school, what did you do for fun? What did you like to do on your free time with your friends and your siblings?
Okay. At home, what we would do on Saturdays, the school will let us go to the school playground. We would play there a lot. And then see, they had all that sidewalks and everything. So we took our skates and everybody was skating there on Saturdays and sometimes during holidays or even after school sometimes we did, but mostly was Saturdays. And a lot of us, since everybody lived close by, we would take our skates and we would just skate and have a good time, just spend time with each other and play around and play. And so then at night at home, after we were through with dinner, just us, just our family, we would just go outside to play. We played volleyball, we played tag, we played kick the bucket, and we ran a lot. I think that's why we were so healthy because we ran a lot. We made a lot of exercises playing out there. And then the mosquitoes would bother us. So I don't know who got this idea, but my brothers got a big bucket and they would put cow manure in there and lit it. And the smoke, they would just go around with a pail and the smoke would get the mosquitoes away so that we could play there more. And in the school, we also had a lot of, we play volleyball, we play basketball, or not football. And then after school, we would have games. The rooms would play against each other. We never went anywhere to play the games. We just played them right there. We just stayed at the school. And that was part of our PE, and that was part of our, after school, something different that we could do.
Did you ever work as a kid in the cotton fields or anywhere?
Oh, yes. Let me tell you something. Our main thing that we did, we helped at home, of course. And then my mother, we all had chores. We would clean our rooms. We would dust the floors. We would mop the floors. Everybody had to put their stuff away. It's not things that I'm going to leave my thing here and I'm going to leave my shoes. No. We were brought up, if you put something, you put it away. You don't leave it here. So our house was very nice and tidy. And that's what we did in the home. And then the bigger ones would take care of the little ones, keep them busy from crying. We would help our mother because she worked very hard. She had a lot of children and she was always in the kitchen cooking or cleaning or something. Then one day we saw the workers picking the cotton. So we got the right idea. We can pick cotton and make money. And so Dad said, okay. So they give you a huge sack that you tie around your waist and you drag it. And then you're taking the cotton out of the ants, And so put it in the air. So, okay, we only lasted like 2 or 3 hours. So then we went, they weigh the cotton, they paid us, which was to us it was a lot of money, just a few dollars, but to us at that time that was 80 years ago, so there was a lot of money. So then the next day Dad said, well, do you want to pick cotton again? Said no. One of the reasons, because your hands, as you take off the cotton balls out of the plant, they get all scratched, they get all. So no, that we didn't pick cotton anymore. We just helped around the house. We had a lot to do in the house because we had to keep the yard clean also. That was our chores, to keep the yard clean. No, we don't leave papers here and there. We were just taught to do it and we did it.
What did your dad do? What was his occupation?
Oh, my dad was a farmer. My mother inherited the house from her mother because she was the only daughter. and they had 12 acres there in the house.
Mm.
That's where my father started farming. And then little by little, he bought a farm in Chavez, another in Tornillo, another in Clint. And since my oldest brother, one of my oldest brothers didn't finish just the third grade, my father had to get him out of school to because he needed him in the farm, but he was really paid for because after my father bought the farms, he bought a farm for them in Fabens, and he gave them that farm, and then they took care of it, two of my brothers. But he had a lot of farms, and he worked very hard to, get up in the middle of the night to irrigate, and that was hard for us, and that was hard for him, I know. And that's how I lost my grandpa, who was his father. He was irrigating, and it was very wet. It was raining, and he got all soaked. And then he died about 2 days later on July the 4th. And I'll
Wow.
never forget that. It was from working in the farm because the farm was. And then I also felt that for my mother because we had finished dinner, and then the workers come in later on about 2, 3 hours, and she has to go to the same more dinner for them because they were out irrigating or baling the hay. Or see, my father grew cotton and alfalfa, and then he also grew some vegetables like chili. We had our chili grown there. We had the sugar canes, which were good. Then he tomatoes and a little bit of squash, and then corn, a lot of corn. We grew a lot of corn, and that was all part of our meal.
Did you have any animals?
Oh yes, my father had 2 or 3 cows at the time because one was always pregnant, so you can't milk a cow when they're pregnant. And so what they did, my brothers would milk the cows. And then my mother just made so much with that milk. All we drank all day long, morning, noon, and night was milk, 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 because we had the cows. Then my mother, and we would help her make the butter. We would help her make the cheese, the cottage cheese, the asaderos. She made all that. So that was real good for us. And then she would make some kind of candy with milk and sugar.
Hmm.
Just boiled it. I can't remember, but it was the only candy because we didn't buy candy. My parents never bought us candy. Maybe for holidays, but not usual.
Yeah.
And my aunts used to live in El Paso. That was about 20 miles from San Elizario, and they used to bring us candy, but we never bought candy. But no, the cows were real good because we also had chickens and to lay eggs, so we would have eggs like once a week because there were so many of us and the chickens don't lay eggs that much. And then when my mother wanted to make chicken soup, well, she'd just go outside and get a chicken and cut their neck and make chicken. We would have fried chicken. So we had,
Yummy.
yes, we had a lot of food there.
Yeah. So, and that's what you mean with your mom was always so busy because there was always food, but there was always people. So she always had to be cooking.
Yes, she's always showing us how to do things. We didn't listen, but she was always showing us how to do things. And then she made her homemade bread. She made biscuits, tortillas, and, she just made everything. We don't run to the store to get like right now, to get a package of tortillas or to get the red chili. She made the best chili enchiladas, red chili enchiladas. And she had a big bucket of chili, and she made her own chili. And then we had the cheese. So really, we just needed the tortillas and the onions. So yes, she made a lot of food. She was always very busy.
Okay. And what did you guys do on Sundays? You mentioned church, but what
Okay,
how
on
was that?
Sunday, see, San Elizario, the church in San Elizario is one of the oldest in the nation,
Yeah.
and it's a very beautiful church. we all grew up there. We all were baptized there, were confirmed, made our first Holy Communion, and participated in whatever they. Also, that since we were going to a public school, the church had, like on Saturdays, had catechism lessons
Mm.
so that we could learn our faith. And it was very good because we not only learned our faith, but then after they gave us a lesson, it was either I don't know if they had deacons at that time, but it was the assistant or people that worked there that gave us the lessons. And after the lessons, it was very nice because we played volleyball or we played some kind of sport. And it was very nice. And then on Sundays, we would go to mass. When my sisters were older, some of us would go to I don't know, I think it was 7 o'clock mass, and the other ones would go to a later mass so that my mother would prepare something on Saturday so she didn't have to be in the kitchen. And so then when we came from mass, we would sit down to eat. And afterwards, I never saw my mother rest. I never saw my mother sit down to rest.
Yeah.
She had a chair outside of her room, and she would sit there for a few minutes because she loved to be on the sun. And I get that from her. I just love to sit out in the sun. I sit out in the sun and just pray.
Mhm.
So that's the only time on Sunday that I saw my mother really sit down, and we would get the newspaper on Sunday. So she would read the newspaper and the comics, and I would see her sitting down relaxing, which I never did during the week. And then in the afternoon, no matter if somebody was visiting us or anything, 4 o'clock, my mother would just kneel down, start the rosary. Boy, you better. She didn't even have to call us. Everybody just went and knelt down and we said the rosary.
Mm.
And then, like I said, then after we finished the rosary, we go outside, and play. We were outdoors a lot, and we were always playing something. If it was just tag, just running after the ball or kicking the ball, we
Yeah.
had a lot of fun just doing those things because we didn't go to the movies. I think we went one time that I can remember. So we didn't go any places except to visit maybe people, but not like today, that you go to the movies, you go to games. No, we just stayed home most of the time.
Yeah. So did you ever go to any like baseball games?
Did I ever go where?
Baseball games?
Yeah, sometimes they would have baseball games there. The older people, like the men, usually it was the men that they have the games. And yes, sometimes we would go, but not all the time. But they were not far from the house. For one, my dad didn't like us to be going here and there, to tell you the truth. We just stayed home, and that's the way we were raised, and we were content with it
Mhm.
because you have to obey your parents, so.
Of
But
course.
no, they did have the games sometimes.
And your catechism classes, were they in Spanish? But like all of in church was also in Spanish, or how was that?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Your catechism classes, were they in Spanish?
Yes, but then after we grew up, and I guess they found out that we were having trouble, because we have to learn the books, or they did start it, but I did learn all my classes in Spanish first. All my prayers, Our Father, the Hail Mary, all the prayers were in Spanish. But then it's years went by, then they changed that to English because they knew that everything in the school was in English. And, so that we wouldn't get behind on our English, they just started teaching them in English instead of Spanish. And that was good for us too, because, somebody said, well, our language is Spanish. I said, yes, but all the schools that we're going to go to, the grade school, high school, college, everything's in English. So we might as well. And
Yeah.
that's why I think I had so much trouble with my comprehension, because I didn't start English until I was 7 years old. I think I was when I went into first grade.
Mhm.
And well, they did start it in English because they saw the need. the community, you know.
Yeah. How did you and your family get around in San Elizario? Did you guys have like any horses?
Okay. The first car that I remember my father had was a 1937 Ford. And the only reason that I remember, I don't remember the car, but I remember I have a picture of my sister and I sitting on the fender of the car. And it's a 1937 that we got around. Now, we had two bicycles at home. When my brothers wanted to go bike riding or we shared the bicycles. We went bike riding because, see, at that time there was no traffic on the road. I mean, it was farmland. And so the roads were very safe. So we just ride the bicycles. But then as my father progressed in farming, then he had tractors and he had a truck and dump truck that I remember, but he had a lot of tractors and a lot of machinery. And then he started, like when the boys were bigger, like my oldest brother that had to quit school. That's what my father said. If you come help me, I'll buy you a car as soon as you can drive. And we started driving like at 14. You didn't need a license. We just drove because it was a farm.
Mhm.
And so that's how we got around in the
How did you learn how to drive?
Okay, my father is the one that taught me how to drive. See, when I went to high school, they didn't have a high school in San Elizario. So the same bus that transported the kids in San Elizario would transport us to Isleta High School. I graduated from Isleta High School. And so it was very nice because then as soon as I think I was just on my sophomore year, I was in the band. I played the saxophone in grade school. I started in the 6th grade and I played all through high school. And so my father, by that time, he had a Cadillac. So he would load me the Cadillac and take some of the girls. I think there were two or three or four of us that I would take them to practice because we had practice on Thursday night. Then we had the football games, which was Friday night, and my father would loan me the car. And then the next week, then another member, she would take her card and she would take us. So it was very nice because I started to drive. He showed me how to drive. And I'm so thankful because he really did such a good job. She said, when a car's coming and you see that it's coming fast, but you have the right of way, you just press on that gas. So, and be sure you stop and be sure you never speed. That's one of the things he said. You never speed over the speed limit. You always follow the rules. And he was a very good instructor. So he's the one that taught me. My mother never drove. She never drove. One time my dad had to go fix a car in Clint, which was about 4 miles from there. So my mother had to bring the car back because I think my father had a tractor to bring home. And she said that she just put it on the first gear and she came all the way to San Elizario because she was so scared. She drove a car, but that's the only time my mother, she never drove a car. She always stayed home. She was always stayed home. We came home from school, she was always there. We came for lunch, she was always there. She was always at home. And that's a blessing.
Yeah, definitely. Who were some of the memorable people in San Elizario that you remember?
Okay, they're the friends that I had in school that we still kept friends after because some of us went to Isleta High School and the other one went to Clint High School because Clint was only 3-4 miles. Isleta was about 12 miles, but the bus took us, the same school bus, the elementary school took us. So then I never lost count of them because I would see them. See, the church, you knew everybody in the church and you knew everybody in the school. So then we kept in touch, we would have the fiestas at the church with the matachines and the bazaar and the food and the games for the kids. We used to love that. We would see each other again, and we would always, spend time together.
Mhm. Tell me more about the community.
About what?
The community. What did it? Well, what gatherings would bring the community together?
Okay, like I said, it was mainly the fiestas in the church that brought the community together. But then as we grew older and we were like teenagers, there was a dance hall. It was just about half a mile from the house, and Sanchez Dance Hall. And then they would have dances there. And that's one of the things that my father would let us go. So we just walk to the hall and have our dances and get together, and um, a good time. Because to us, it was something different that we didn't do it all the time. But it was really the church that where you met most of the people when we had the fiestas and when they had meetings or something. And it was a nice thing that it was a church, that really brought the people together.
Did your mom ever help with the church, or did you ever help with the church?
No, my mother didn't help with the church. I did help when they started the catechism, and after I got older, and I did teach some of the kids, their first prayers, like the Hail Mary and the Our Father. And no, I was a little bit involved with the church, not too much, because, like I said, Dad really just liked us to stay home. But that's one of the things that he let me do, and I did teach the catechism there. And not only there, but after I moved, after I got married and everything, I was teaching at the catechism also. I like that. I like that because you get to know more people, and teaching God's work is something to me that's very important for the future. So I learned that, and I have done it after I got married also.
Did you did you ever go to any posadas? Do you remember them?
Oh yes, we had the posadas. Oh my gosh, it was so neat because we hadn't have it in the church, and some of the people were inside, and some other people were outside. And then we would replay, what Mary and Joseph did when they were trying to find room for the baby Jesus to be born. And we go to one door and knock on the door, and and there were some sayings that we said back and forth. And then after that, we start singing and we go to another door because the church had 3 or 4 doors on the side. Then we go to the side and we do the same thing. It was so memorable. It was so nice.
Yeah.
And after that, we went to the third church, and no, you can come in, and we don't have room. And we really acted, and it was so neat. And then afterwards, I think we had at somebody's house we would meet and we would eat. They would have some food for us, and then we would eat, and there was a treat, really. It was a treat, but that's one of the things we also attended, was the posadas. Very memorable, because after that, I mean, I don't see too many people having posadas anymore.
Did your mom ever help with making any of the foods?
No, my mother usually just stayed home.
Yeah.
I mean, they let us go when we were older, like I said, to the posadas and stuff like that. My mom, but she was very good at going to mass on Sundays. She was very devoted to God, and she was a very simple person, and she was a very uh, humble, humble person. So, no, she taught us our religion real good.
Do you remember if it snowed ever in San Elizario?
Do I remember what?
If it snowed?
Oh, from what I remember, I think it snowed maybe once every 2 years. It wasn't like even once a year. San
Okay.
Elisario's weather was very mild. I think that's why we spent so much time outside because the weather was very mild. Yes, we got rainy season. Sometimes there was rain for days.
Yeah.
Didn't rain that much. And then the snow, I remember in the snow, I remember just playing with my little brother one time that we were making a snowman and it was in the ditch, where there was a lot of snow. And I dropped him. And I was holding him in my arms and I dropped him, but he fell in the snow and boy, he cried and cried. But no, I remember playing in the snow and just rolling in the snow, because it was something that we didn't see too often.
Mhm.
And no, it did snow that much, but I did see snow several times.
Yeah. Did you ever have to walk to school in the snow?
Oh, yes, we had to walk. Rain or snow or whatever, we had to walk to school. There was nothing that, no, well, it's raining, you don't walk to school. Well, we did. We did walk to school. We did. We couldn't use that as an excuse, and everybody did. And I remember one time during the school, I don't know if it was the aftermath of a tornado or what, but we were in the school and all of a sudden it was so windy that we closed the windows and then there was all this wind and the school was dark and we were so scared. We thought it was the end of the world. And no, afterwards, I think they said it was the aftermath of a tornado that we experienced there.
Oh,
But no,
wow.
they kept us in there, and I think what we did, we sat on the ground instead of sitting on our desk. We
Mhm.
just all sat in the ground close to the wall, and they just kept us there. No, it was over in about a few, I don't remember minutes or hours, but it was over. But it was scary. It was really scary for us.
Mhm. Um, what are what are some other good memories you have of San Elisario that maybe
But
I have missed to ask?
okay, would you repeat that question?
What are some good memories of San Elisario that maybe I have forgotten to ask?
Okay, the memories that I have, can I tell you about our vacations?
Yes.
Okay, the memories that I have of our vacations, see, our vacations weren't what they are now. Now you go to Disneyland, you go here, you go there, Hawaii, you go. We used to go to visit our aunts on our vacation. My dad, I mean, the car was packed because not everybody went, but the car was packed. Maybe it was when my brothers were older and they were already married. But I remember the car being so full, we had to take a bucket in there because we weren't used to being in the car, so we were always getting an upset stomach and everything. We would all see our aunts. My father had three sisters in California. We didn't do that too much, but we did go about 3, 4 times. So we'd get in the car and we would stop in Arizona because my father had uh, relatives there in Arizona also. And we just had such a good time. It wasn't like going here and there. We just went to visit and we stayed there. We had to sleep in the floor and we didn't care. We were, we didn't do that too often. So to us, it was a big deal. And we always had so much fun with the cousins because we went and played outside. We played games, and then our cousin would tell us the spooky stories, and we were all scared. And it was so nice because they always had a lot of food for us, and we enjoyed each other's company. We didn't have to go anywhere. We didn't have television. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of these electronic things. We did have a radio, and then we couldn't turn it on because it wasted too much electricity. That's what my father said. But we had a lot of fun with them. And then after we'd stay there like 2 or 3 days, and my father would take us to California, to Los Angeles, where we had three aunts. The same thing. We would visit this aunt and one day, another one the other day, and spend all day there. We played a lot with the cousins. We played games. We went outside. We ran. We played ball, and that's the way it was. We didn't have to go to movies. We didn't have to go anywhere. We just visit people and and just talk to each other and learn from each other and listen to each other. And that was, for us, it was a lot of fun because we stay home. So it was so nice to say to have those vacations. We did have other vacations where we went to White Sands. We enjoyed White Sands, but that wasn't often. It was just maybe once every 3, 4, 5 years. Then we went to White Sands. We had a lot of fun because we would bury each other in the sand, not the face, but we buried all our bodies in the sand. So we had a lot of fun there. And then we went to Carlsbad Caverns. Have you been to Carlsbad Caverns?
I haven't. I want to.
Carlsbad Caverns is something you have to see.
Okay, I will.
It's such a beautiful place. And that's the only place that we went to Carlsbad Caverns. And we didn't have a McDonald's. We didn't go to restaurants. My mother would just pack 2 big baskets of sandwiches, because we never went to restaurants. But the caverns, I mean, it's something everybody should see. It's so beautiful. They turn all the lights off and everything is so dark you can't see anything. It's so beautiful. Everybody should go to Carlsbad Caverns. It's something to see. We also went to the Elephant Butte Lake. Elephant Butte used to be so full. I mean, now the water is so low. When we were there, the water was so high. We had so much water. And we used to have fun, like I said, just there playing in the end of the lake, getting our feet wet and everything. And that was our nice vacations that we had.
When did you usually take these vacations? When you were out of school?
No, we always did it in the summer.
In the summer.
We didn't, my parents didn't believe on taking us out of school during the school. They thought school was very important.
Right.
So we always did it in the summer. And I'm sure we didn't have as many spring breaks and all that like you have now, but we did have the 3 months, June, July, and August, all the time in the summer. So that's when we did visit our aunts, and that's why we went to White Sands and the other places and visit other aunts, They were close by there in El Paso. I had also had aunts in El Paso. We used to go visit them, and we used to play a lot with the cousins too. Like I kept in touch with them, and but they still live in El Paso. They're still there.
Who did your dad take you to El Paso when you guys would come?
Did our dad what?
Bring you to El Paso when you would come visit your aunts?
Yes, sometimes. We would go shopping to El Paso like once a year when school was going to start. And I remember the same thing taking us to El Paso. We spent all day there, and my mother was the one. My father knew a barber that used to cut his hair there in El Paso. So my mother would go buy some packages, and then would take them to the barber shop, and he would keep them there. And they would go to the 3B store to get shoes for everybody. And there was about once or twice a year, and we would go shopping there. We had a good time. And that's one of the times that we would have I don't remember, like a sandwich or something that we would buy. And we would have a very good time because we weren't used to going, but when you have to buy shoes, you have to go. When we needed something, most of the time, my dad was the one that would go into town and see his sisters two of his sisters were there. So he would visit with him and everything. But that's one of the things that we did do is visit our aunts. And my Aunt Maria was my father's sister, helped my mother a lot because when my mother was having babies, she would go over and stay with her to help her. And one time, my biggest sister, they took her out of school to help my mother. And my aunt found out, so she said, no, she's going to school. I'm going to move over there, and I'm going to go help your mother, and you can go back to school. And, she did finish to the 8th grade. And she was so thankful for that. She was the only one that had an outside job. She worked at my older sister. She was 10 years older than I am. And she worked at a grocery store there in San Elizario, not full time, just a few hours a week because she had to help my mother. So she worked there, but I think she got like $5 a week or something, you know. Those times people didn't pay that much. And the value of money was a lot better than now. So no, that's the only one that really worked out of the house.
Mhm. Okay. We're almost done. Who are some memorable people in San Elizario? Do you remember Mr. Alarcon?
Oh, yes. You know, Mr. Larcon was such a fine superintendent. He was a superintendent of the schools. I went to school with his daughters and everything, and he was very Catholic. And do you know that when we had Holy Day of Obligation during the week, you know what he did? He got all the school and took us to church. The
Wow.
whole school went to church on the Holy Day of Obligation because he was a very good Catholic.
Yeah.
And you know, you can't do that anymore. But he was, well, you know, from what I remember, most of the people there were Catholics because they all went to church. You saw them everywhere, and they all went to church. There were just a few that I don't know if they didn't go to church because they weren't Catholics or what, but most of the people were Catholics and they were fine people and they helped each other. They were there for us and took care of us and everything. And it was so nice, you know, having people that care for each other, that spend time with each other, that see, do you need anything? Do you need any help? And you know, it was so nice. It was so nice. No, I really love growing up in a small town where everybody knew everybody else.
Mm.
Nobody was thinking, well, I'm richer than you are, or most of us just, most of our had a little more money than us, but it's okay. We weren't poor. I remember that my mother, even if she just had a little bit left over, there was this lady that always went to visit her, and she was married and she was older than my mother. And she went to visit her. My mother would always give her a plate of food and always give her a plate for her husband. There were no poor people that didn't have enough to eat because they helped each other.
Mm.
People knew that she needed some food and they were there to help them when they needed some food or when the husband got injured or, you know, they always helped each other and we were there for each other. And I really enjoyed that. I
Mhm.
was growing up.
What year did you move out of San Elizario?
What year did I move out?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was 22 years old, 1957.
Mm.
2 years after that, that's when I got married. 22 years after I moved out. And then I came to live in El Paso. My husband was a policeman at El Paso Police Department.
Mm.
And so that's where we moved to El Paso. We lived in the Pendale area. I don't know if you remember, but it was not in town. It was about 15 miles from town.
Mm.
And then when got a job, then I got a job in El Paso. I had to commute back and forth. So,
How did you meet him if you were living in San Elizario and he was from El Paso?
how did I what?
How did you meet him if you were in San Elizario and he was in El Paso?
I used to have a job. See, my father bought me a car and I used to have a car. So I would commute. It would take me 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get to El Paso, but the traffic wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, there were so few cars, there were so few roads that it would take me like 30 minutes to get downtown. I had a job. My first job was at the White House department store.
Mm.
And so I commute back and forth. So one day coming back from work, there was a school stop sign. So he stopped me because, you know, it's a school, the kids were crossing the street. And then after that, he followed me, and that's how it started.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
he worked for the police department for 20 years.
And he had just started working there in the department when you met him?
Yeah, he was working for the police department, and then afterwards he went and worked. He had a car lot, business, a used car lot. And then after that, he worked for about 15 years for the bank, Valley Bank, there in El Paso.
And then from El Paso, you moved to Albuquerque, or where did you move after?
Okay, then we stayed there in El Paso until he retired. He was 70. He retired from the bank, and I came to Albuquerque because I have a daughter here in Albuquerque that had one child, the first child, and I promised her that when we retired, I was going to move so I could help her with the kids. So
Yeah.
she had 3 children. I took care of them, but it was just twice a week because her husband is a dentist. And so she worked just part-time because she'd like to stay home. So 2 days a week, I would take care of that child. Then she had 3. And so I would take care of the 3 just 2 days a week. And she paid me very well because she said, it cost me a lot more if I paid somebody, and I don't want anybody to take care of my kids except you.
Right.
So for 11, 12 years, I took care of her kids. And the oldest one now is graduating this May from U of A in Tucson, Arizona.
Wow,
And
congratulations.
so I'm so glad. I said, my little Haley, you're a baby now. You're graduating from college. And the second one is going to be graduating in 2 years.
Okay.
And the youngest one is still here. He's a freshman in high school.
Oh,
So those are the 3 children that I took care of. That
yeah.
I was already retirement age. I was already 65 when I came here, but
Yeah.
I had so much fun taking care of them. It was
Oh.
such a blessing to take care of them.
Have they visited San Elizario? Have they ever been there?
Yes, they did because we had family reunions there, Lillian's house and Fina's house, and we had family reunions, and then we had another family reunion through the years. So we take the kids to show them where we used to live, and my mother's house, and my grandma's house, and no, we have taken them there to San Elizario. But
Okay.
they don't like it down there. Say, no, no, no. We like it where we live.
Yeah. San Elizario, it's still beautiful, still so much country, so much land. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say before we?
Let me see if I have. No, I think you asked just about everything that I was gonna talk about.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would like to add, we had when we were very little, we had it bad, but we didn't know because that was our life,
Yeah.
But my mother, my sister Fina, which is 10 years older than I am, Lilian's mom, she tells me that on wash days, they will wash the clothes once a week. She had to be absent from school on Tuesdays to help her wash the clothes. They had to go outside, build the fire. They had 2 big vats that they put on top of the fire, one with a soap and one to rinse out the clothes. And then they would have the scrub boards that they would scrub. Can you imagine scrubbing the clothes for 12 people and then hanging them all up?
Yeah.
And then if the winds came and got it all dirty, they had to rinse them out again. And then we had an outdoor. We didn't have a toilet inside until I was about 8 years old. That's when my father remodeled the house and put the water. We didn't have water. We had to pump the water. We did have electricity, but we had to pump the water for if we wanted water. So it was bad for us, but I didn't think it was bad for us because that was our life.
Yeah.
And everybody, there's people that had more than we do, but mostly everybody used to hang out the clothes. I hanged out the clothes when I got married. I didn't have a dryer, so I still hang 1957. I still hang out my clothes outside.
Yeah, I still hang out my
That's
clothes.
part of our life. We just got used to it. We didn't have all this electronics and all these commodities that we now thank God that we have all this, and it
Mhm.
spoiled us. So, but
Yeah.
no, that's the way our life is, and we were content and we were happy, and our
Yeah.
parents were very good to us. I mean, they never abandoned us. They never. Uh, my mother was very soft-spoken. All she had to do was look at you with that look, and she meant business.
I know.
And my father was more strict, even with the boys. So, no, and we also had a big pecan tree outside. I remember that pecan tree because the boys used to fight. No, I'm going to pick the pecans. No, I'm going to get on top of the tree and shake that tree.
Yeah.
And so, no, this was a part of life, and it was a good life. And I do thank God for my good parents, and I saw them work so hard. My mother was only 64 when she passed. My father was 66 because they worked very hard. They had very hard lives. So, but
Yeah.
they never complained. I never saw my mom complain. My mother never cussed. I never saw her gossip. My mother was a good person. She was a very good person. So I thank God for that.
Aw. Sounds like a great childhood. Like there was really not much to worry about. You were happy with what you had, and that was okay.
Right. We didn't worry. That was our life.
Yeah.
And that was mostly everyone's life there, because most of the people, that's what they did. They farmed. There were a few people that had other jobs, like we had a mechanic right there. You need a mechanic where you have but it was a very small town
Yeah.
with a lot of good people. And we didn't have the crime. We left our doors open at night.
Mm.
We didn't have the crime that they do right now. I mean, it was just so safe. It was just so awesome to be down and know everybody, and everybody knows you, and they're there to help you.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, Miss Rose, I'm gonna stop recording. Thank you.